Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to answer the question, will Wizards of the Coast buy Roll20? Alright, so I'm not going to bury the lead, I'll tell you right now. I think the answer is Wizards of the Coast, in my humble opinion, Wizards of the Coast will not buy Roll20, and I'm going to spend this video telling you why. Alright, so the reason why is Roll20 is not a good VTT. And not because Roll20 isn't a good VTT, but I don't think a good VTT actually exists at scale. I do think there are some VTTs that have some really cool experimental ideas, but one, you really can't do anything experimental if Wizards of the Coast is going to buy it. They're going to want something that's proven successful. And I think overall, VTTs have failed. Virtual tabletops have failed. And Roll20 is proof that no real VTT has arrived yet, right? And I think there's even a question if a VTT will ever arrive, right? So let's talk this through. So the reason we're talking about this is Wizards of the Coast bought, actually Hasbro bought D&D Beyond for a shocking value of $145 million, right? Now, I don't think they overpaid for it, right? They didn't pay for the tech. They bought the content, the time, and the trust. And those things were they were worth $145 million, right? The tech was definitely not worth $145 million, in my humble opinion, right? Okay, so here's the issue. Roll20 is the most successful VTT on the planet. And there are reports that it has 10 million users. I don't know if subscribers. I think they might have 10 million subscribers. There's a big question on, like, is this an active user? Is a user a subscriber? Is a subscriber? Whatever, right? They got 10 million, at least, users, probably subscribers, right? And the reality is they've really been they've been the most successful VTT, right? So one, if a VTT was going to be bought, it would be Roll20. Roll20 has absolutely defeated Fantasy Grounds. So Fantasy Grounds was in the mix. I think a few people like Fantasy Grounds, but overall, from everything I've read and everything I've seen, I've never used Fantasy Ground. I have used Roll20, and I'll tell you about my experience in a minute. Right? So, but Fantasy, there was a big battle. Both the competitors had their swords out. Roll20 has defeated Fantasy Grounds. I think that's very, very clear. Let me know in the comments below if you think there's any evidence that Fantasy Grounds has any real teeth, but I think it's kind of gumless, and it's just showing its gums. Roll20 is rolling with fangs, right? So in that fight, now here's the issue. VTTs were supposed to make D&D easier, and from everything I've seen and everything I've heard, Roll20 does not do that, right? So basically, all Roll20 does is make it possible to play Dungeons & Dragons online, right? But the reality is, they have tried to make it so that every single aspect of D&D works the same way at the virtual tabletop as it does at the real tabletop. And frankly, you can get it to work, but the Dungeon Master has to put in a ton of time and effort, and it is complicated, right? It's complicated, and you will spend a crap ton of time and energy configuring your images and learning the configuration of Roll20, and it is not intuitive, and it is not easy from everything I've heard and from everything I've seen. They recently gave out Lost Minds of Phandelver, and they had given out entire free adventures before that. And I went in, and I actually, set up, a campaign, and I put the maps in, and I moved the minis around, and it was frustrating at every step. And that was like 2 years ago, right? And maybe they've got, but from every single thing I've heard, everybody, they're like, you can get it to do what you want, but you're going to have to work hard, you're going to have to be tech savvy, you're going to have to invest a lot of time, and it's going to be painful, right? And honestly, I don't think Wizards of the Coast wants to bring that experience to their people, right? Plus, another reason why I think Wizards of the Coast will absolutely not buy Roll20 is D&D Beyond is a actual very good resource for table players, people playing at the table. I have one. I have a stellar Dungeon Master player. He is a Dungeon Mastering for me, and he is playing in one of my games, and he has shared his subscription because I'm one of his players in one of his campaigns with D&D Beyond, and he quite literally uses D&D Beyond at the table. He does not bring books. He is an extremely good player. He has no trouble finding everything he needs for his character on D&D Beyond. And I find his D&D Beyond use very unintrusive, and it's really not a problem. So whereas the VTT, it's really not like that. You can't really serve as a good resource for somebody. It's just not. And so the reality is, I don't think the VTT experience has been mastered. And it's pretty suck, actually. When I used it, I was highly unimpressed, frustrated at virtually every single step on Roll20. And the reality is, and the other thing is, I think they've been quite too literal with it, right? They were like, and there was an opportunity to really look at VTTs, and rather than just, let's copy every single RTT into the VTT, which is very uninspired, very unimaginative, and it is not surprising that it has failed. That Roll20 is not a transformative, useful, easier version of Dungeons and Dragons, right? In fact, and the reality, that's another thing, is generally everybody rolling who is doing Roll20 is just people who are unwilling to do the actual work to make a table game, to make an RTT, a real tabletop game, work, right? And the reality, and I will say flat out, it's a commitment issue, right? If you're not willing to do the work to make an RTT work, I think it says something about your commitment as a dungeon master, right? Because VTT games are without a doubt worse. Let me throw this caveat in there. If you have some kind of special, if you're, what's the right term? Actually, I'm sorry, I'm gonna use my D&D knowledge here. Tell me if I'm wrong. If you're disabled, right? And the reason why I'm using that term is I listened to Jennifer Kretschmer. She is literally the disability counselor for Dungeons and Dragons on a lot of their products, and she said disabled is actually the right word, right? So if you're disabled and you cannot play RTT, God bless you. You're fine on Roll20. Everybody else, get to the RTT. VTT sucks, right? Like, and I question your commitment as a dungeon master if you're capable of running an RTT and you're choosing to run VTT. I think it makes it really questions your commitment as a dungeon master, and I think it will shrivel your skills, right? Like, so I'm putting out a warning there. All that's my opinion. What do you think? Do you think Wizards of the Coast will buy Roll20? Do you think anything I said about Roll20 is wrong? Do you think? I will say this: if Wizards of the Coast did buy Roll20, the right price would be $120 million. That would be the correct valuation. It would be a mistake to do it, but if they decided to go forward, and there's lots of reasons why they might, $120 million would be the right price. What do you think would be the right price for Roll20 if it were bought? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in a comment below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.